Hello everyone, welcome back to Ansarkaris. So we are continuing with our topic related to welfare economics. And so far we have covered the modern welfare criteria and new welfare criteria. So we didn't detail the Pareto optimality. So here we saw that the economist Wilfredo Pareto, he said कि if we fulfill certain marginal conditions and the criteria so proposed, will be able to maximize the social welfare. But again, certain limitations that were witnessed were the existence of externalities, and there were certain imperfections in the market. So these affected in a way the effectiveness of the social welfare that was, we can say, claimed under the Pareto optimality conditions, and it failed to measure or fails to measure the welfare changes. So the keyword is measurement of the welfare changes. So this thing was missing in Pareto optimality. Then we covered the Calder-Hicks and the Skitowski paradox. Under this, we saw that Calder-Hicks criteria was seen to be an improvement over the Pareto optimality conditions, where it proposed the compensation principle, and it was suggested that again, if the gainers are able to compensate the losers and still the gainers are in a better off situation, it would be again reaching the situation of social welfare, the maximization of the welfare conditions. But again, it was hypothetical in nature, in the sense that it again just supposed that this much amount of compensation should be made. It again, we saw that things are missing about the manner of compensation. How that will be taken forward is missing. So the ideas were seen not to be, we can say, operationally feasible. So given this, these are the, we can say, the criterias. Now we are moving to social welfare functions. Social welfare functions, will discuss the different functions proposed by different economists. So first one is the classical social welfare function. Under this, we see is being proposed by group of economists named Bentham, Pigou, and Marshall. So they proposed the classical social welfare function. So again, it's a welfare function. The social welfare function is dependent upon certain factors. So under the classicals, we see that we write that W, which represents the welfare, is a sum of the cardinal utilities. So we represent the cardinal utilities as U1, U2, and it will be up till UN. So here we see that U1, U2 up till UN is the individual person's utility under the community. So it is the cardinal utility. So cardinal utilities are quantitative in nature. They would be having certain, we can say, mathematical figure. And this is again its limitation, that we are not having a definite criteria of how to measure the utility in quantitative terms. So it assumed the law of diminishing marginal utility is operational when we're calculating again under the the classical social welfare function is applies to money income in the society. It means that more is the money income, the marginal utility derived from the money being earned, it diminishes with time. So this law is applicable, and again, to maximize the welfare under these conditions, given we have the welfare function working in this manner, we see that when the marginal utility of the money income of all people or all individuals in the society, that becomes equal. So marginal utility of income is equal, or you can say same for all in the society, then we see that under the classical, social welfare is maximized. But again, given this thing, marginal utility of money for all the individuals is very, very difficult to be same for all the individuals under the practical conditions. So when we go through the critique of the classical function, we see firstly that the modern economist, they stated that firstly utility should be ordinal in nature, that is more realistic. Ordinal utility should be used, that's more effective, we can say. Chances of error or the margin of error is less. Then interpersonal comparison of utility, again, that is not scientific and it cannot be validly, we can say, made. So again, this is a part under the classical social welfare function, but this is the argument that interpersonal comparison of utility, how do we do? There is again no definite structure of how this comparison can be made. So that is why it is not scientific in nature. As these interpersonal comparisons of the utility, we can say they are based on the notions of the society. And again, these are notions, so they can't be scientific. And another, they made one ethical assumption, the classicals. So under this, they've given equal weight to all the individuals in society, that we saw here that mu of money should be equal for all. So again, this is not practically working or feasible in the sense, for example, there is a drunkard person and a professor of any subject. So how can we say that the utility each person that is assigned, how it can be equal? So it is difficult under such situations to maximize the social welfare. So the second social welfare function is called the max min, which is a combination of two words, maximum and minimum, and it is also called the Rawlsian social welfare function. Rawlsian because it is on the name of the economist who proposed this. That is John Rawls. So under this, he assumed that individuals, they are risk averse. Risk averse, that means they tend to minimize the risk, and this brings this assumption and again the social welfare function more closer towards the pragmatic functioning or the behavior of the consumers in real life. So it says that the such a criteria which is proposed under the Rawlsian social welfare function, it can be chosen, that departure from the perfect equality, it would be made when we say that under unequal distribution of the utilities, when we see the worst of individuals under the equality situation, if that person is getting better off under unequal distribution of the utilities, then we say that social welfare gets maximized. So this is a little tricky. How do we write it algebraically? So this is, we can say, welfare function of, again, the individual utilities up till n is a total number of individuals in community, and it is a function of the minimum utilities. So what does this mean? So it states that the social welfare, it is depending upon the worst of individuals, that is person having minimum utility in the society. So in this case, why it is like excessively focused upon the people with minimum utility or people who are worst off? Because the social welfare function and the changes and the impacts are being determined, they're determined on the basis of the changes in the utility of, again, we can say, for example, the poorer section. If under let's say unequal distribution of resources, the worst of individuals who were under the equal distribution of resources, they are getting better off under the unequal distribution. So that is why social welfare will be maximized here. Third type of social welfare function is given by Bergson, Samuelson, social welfare function. So these are, again, it is on the name of the economist who proposed. They have used the ordinal utility index to measure the social welfare maximization in the society. So simply we write it's a function of U1, U2 up till the utility n of the individuals. So here this is representing the ordinal utility index of the people in the society. And this ordinal utility index, further if we look into this, we can say that it depends upon several factors. Those factors includes the goods and services consumed by the people in the society, then the magnitude of work and leisure, and also the kind of work done determines the ordinal utility. In a way, all these factors are helping to rank the utilities which are derived by the individuals will depend upon these three factors. We can say 3 to 4 factors. So we can say that the Bergson-Samuelson social welfare function states that the welfare function, it depends upon some factors. So we look into them. Firstly, we can say that it is dependent upon the utility of individual members of society. So it means the members outside the society are not having any kind of influence or share in determining the maximization of the welfare. Then it is individualistic in nature. That is, individual's utility is very crucial here under this type of social welfare function. That the individualistic means that the utility of an individual will depend upon their own evaluation of the welfare and not dependent upon any other individual who is a part of the society. So it depends on their own evaluation of welfare. So that is why it is called individualistic. Third, we say that there are again explicit value judgments. Explicit value judgment which are having an impact. So we say it's a social welfare function. It is not unique. And it is why it is not unique, because it is varying with the value judgments, which is again more, we can say, realistic. Because value judgments have an impact even how the welfare or the maximization would be impacted. So the social welfare function is not unique because of this. So here we see that we have already seen what are value judgments. So these are again the ethical notions, and they are not scientific in nature, not a scientific method. So we say that under Bergson, further, we are still on this only, that he says value judgments, they must be consistent. They must be consistent in nature. So what does this mean? Consistency of value judgments. It states, for example, if there are 3 alternatives present in the society in front of the individuals, which are, let's say, A, B, and C. If we see that A alternative is preferred over B alternative and B alternative is preferred over C alternative. So it means A is preferred over C alternative. And this is also known as the transitivity condition, which should be met. And graphically, we can represent this social welfare function. So on y-axis, we have B's utility. On x-axis, we have a individual's utility. So we assume there are two individuals in the society, and we draw their social welfare curves. So welfare curve 1, 2, 3, and 4 that we have drawn. So we'll draw 2 points in order to So initially we see that we are at position R, and here we see the factors fairness and equity has an important role here, which is again a part of the value judgment also, and this is represented these indifference curves, which are, you can see we have drawn in the graph. So each of this indifference curve represents that the utility of both the individuals is equal on each of the curve. So we have equal social welfare at different points on one single graph. Let's say this point, and these 3 points together, they're representing same amount of social welfare. There's no difference, but it would change when we are shifting on different graphs. So under two people and fairness and equity that is being considered, that is the part of value judgment, which is given by the shape of the indifference curve. If we say there's any change in the society and which causes movement from point R to, let's say, point Q, which is on the same W1 social welfare curve. So here we can see that individual B, when we're moving from R to Q, B's utility increases because you can see we're moving upwards. Initially, B's utility was this, now it is reaching at this level. But you can see there's a decline in A's utility up till here. A's utility declines. But overall, we say again, because we are on the same curve, so the overall social welfare, it remains the same. And here we see that loss of A's utility is equal to the gain of B's utility, because we are on the same social welfare curve. Now, when we say the movement from Q to S, again, because of any change in the society, or which is again an exogenous factor here. So movement from Q to S, we see that again social welfare firstly increases because we are moving to higher social welfare curve. So social welfare is increasing, and we see here in this case B's utility will decline. So you can see because point S is slightly lower than the height of point Q, so B's utility declines, and here we can see compared from point Q, A's utility has increased. So in this case we see that gain in A's utility is greater than the loss in B's utility. Previously, when we were on the same curve, the changes were same. The loss and the gain was equal. So in a way, social welfare was also same. It was not changing. Now, because here the social welfare has increased because we have moved on a higher IC. So that is why gain is greater than the loss. Then only we can say that social welfare has increased. So that is why here the gain and loss are not equal. So we can say that the significance of the social welfare function, what is the significance of it? So it helps us to reach a unique optimum position which maximizes social welfare, unlike as we saw under the Pareto optimum, because we were not able to get a unique optimum single position in the society which gives us the pattern of distribution of the factors, or we can say the final commodities. So that's how it helps in maximization of the social welfare. And the unique optimum point which is achieved by here, we are introducing a new concept which is the grand utility possibility frontier. So in a way, we are moving towards the equilibrium condition where we will see the maximization of the social welfare, which is also known as the bliss point here. So grand utility possibility frontier curve, it is the locus of optimum points. The combination of all those points combined together gives us the grand utility possibility frontier. And all these points are Pareto optimal also. Pareto optimal. So optimum points and Pareto optimum both are represented by this single curve. So the possibility frontier, along with the Bergson-Samuelson conditions and the social welfare function combined together, it is giving us the efficient plus equitable distribution of resources, which is maximizing. That point will maximize the social welfare in the society. So under this, as we stated, the bliss point, it is also known as the point of constrained bliss also. Constrained bliss, which is again maximizing the social welfare. So we'll represent this graphically, how we draw the grand utility possibility frontier. So the variables on each graph, each axis remains the same, B's utility and A's utility respectively. So this wavy curve, this is the grand utility possibility frontier, and we will draw the Bergson-Samuelson social welfare indifference curve. So these are W1, W2, W3, W4. So V dash is the grand utility possibility curve. So we talk about different conditions represented by different points. So firstly, this tangency point Q is the point of constrained bliss. And here, this point is firstly representing the achievement of economic efficiency. It is also representing equitable distribution of resources, which is again, we have seen part of the ethical value judgment in the society. And we have drawn different social welfare functions. So why it is this Q point is called the point of constrained bliss? The reasons behind that. So firstly, it is representing unique combination of the factors of production who are employed, then a unique pattern of production is represented, and thirdly, a unique distribution pattern of the resources in the society. That is why it is called a constrained bliss point. So at point R, if you see where both these curves are not tangent, but they are intersecting each other. So we see that there is a conflict between these two things, the efficiency and the equity in the society. And we see that the efficiency element is represented by the V dash curve, which is this curve of grand utility possibility frontier. And ICs are representing equity element. So we can just remember these two things. And if we look at point S, so at point S, it is representing inefficiency, because firstly, it is not on this VV dash curve and it is inside the curve. So that is another symbolic thing which is being represented. And higher is the IC curve. You can see each higher curve. It yields higher social welfare. And higher social welfare means which is more equitable in nature as being judged by the society. That is why it is called value judgment. So equitability would be always judged by the individuals in the society. Now looking at its critique, so still we are on the Bergson-Samuelson social welfare function concept itself. So here we see the economist Baumol. He said that so far the discussion that we had, it is not telling us how to get the value judgments which are required for the construction of the social welfare function. It is just talking about the value judgment. What is the value judgment? But the element, how to arrive, what will be considered as a value judgment, how we are going to identify that is missing in this theory. And another economist, KJ Arrow, who has famous the Arrow's impossibility theorem, which we will cover. So he said that we can't use the value judgments which are arrived through the democratic process, which is the process of the majority rule. Majority is deciding, so that is why it is become called the democratic process to construct the social welfare function. Because again, this is just one of the criterias, and it is not so we can say wholesome, and other factors are missing. So we can't use the value judgments. That what he has critiqued on this. And even when we say that, he said that when we talk about this element, which is again a unique feature of the Bergson model, so individualistic element. So every time we can't say that the individual is the best person to evaluate his own welfare. Sometimes you do not know what is best for you. So again, this cannot be, we can say, a constant thing that can be used effectively for again getting the right data or the outcomes after the assessment. So other factors like what is the political environment when we're talking about then environment conservation, or how that is changing, like we have to take the impact of climate change. Then we talk about again the human rights. So all these factors are missing in the theory. And then we also have Amartya Sen, who clearly denied that using ordinal utility is not the right measure. He talked about promotion of positive freedom of individual. So we'll come to this in detail later on. Now we come to, again, since we have talked about KJ Arrow's critique, so we'll come to Arrow's impossibility theorem. Arrow's impossibility theorem, which is also known as the theorem of social choice. So under this, we say that it is difficult to set up the democratic processes for, as again, if we have to aggregate the individual processes, preferences, because again, what is the purpose of using the democratic process? That is the, what is the decision of the majority people of the community, because we want to know what are the individual preferences, and those preferences will be used to build the social welfare function. So he says it is difficult to set up that democratic process itself. So he says that individual choices, they're also depending upon other factors also which needs to be considered. For example, the quality of the public goods and services which are being made available by the government. So individual choices, they're not just dependent upon the utility being derived from the consumption. So other factors are also equally playing their part. So Arrow's impossibility theorem, he proposed 5 conditions of social choice which needs to be satisfied in order to maximize our goal of social welfare. So all these conditions, they're also reflecting the value judgments also under the theory. So the first condition is of transitivity that we have covered also. Transitivity and, or we can say, consistency. And when we say that the preferences need to be consistent, it also means we're talking about the transitivity condition. So if A is preferred over B and B is preferred over C, then it's natural that A is preferred over C. So this is the transitivity thing needs to be satisfied. So it will hold that when social choices, they have this property of convexity. So in a way, it is also reflecting this property of convexity, which is that alternatives, they must be related by the preference of different individuals Either they can be related or they can be also indifferent also. So this is the property of convexity. So if they are interrelated, if they are convex in nature, then only we can uphold this condition of transitivity. Second condition is responsiveness to individual preferences. So here, what is the meaning of responsiveness? So here it means that social choices which are ranked, they must respond to the individual ranking also, because social choices, they are in a way a group, and they depend upon how the individual are ranking their preferences. So that needs to be responsive. In a way, social choice should be responsive to whatever changes are happening at the lower level, which are the individual choices and the changes happening in the individual choices. So if individual choices are changing in certain direction, in same direction, the social choice also needs to shift. Then only it can be said to be responsive. Third condition is the condition of non-imposition. Non-imposition, which states that the social choices, again, simply as the word is non-imposition, they cannot be imposed independently of the individual preferences. Can't be imposed. Fourth condition is condition of non-dictatorship. So under non-dictatorship, we see that the choices, they shouldn't be dictated by any single individual, but it should be made by the democratic method of voting, or it can be through majority or consensus. But it shouldn't be dictated by any one individual in the society. And the fifth condition is independence of irrelevant alternatives. This means all the alternatives which are available to an individual in the society, they are independent of each other. So if the society decides to choose a single alternative, that decision remains independent, irrespective of the availability or the absence of other alternatives. So that is why each alternative is irrelevant to the other. So these are the 5 conditions which needs to be met. And when things were being assessed by Arrow, he stated, when we have only 2 alternatives in the society, in case of 2 alternatives or options in front of the individuals, if you have to choose out of 2, then we can say that all 5 conditions, they were being satisfied. But the moment we shift to 3 alternatives, it is impossible to fulfill all the conditions, and it would be a situation that at least one condition out of these 5 conditions that we have discussed will be violated in case of availability of 3 alternatives. Now, he has also proved them, so we will understand that. So here, let's say alternatives in front of the individuals. There are 3 alternatives which we can name as X, Y, and Z. These are the 3 alternatives. And the individuals are 2 individuals, 3 individuals, A, B, C. So now they will give their rank, because we are considering the ordinal utility. So under ordinal utility, we always give a rank. So here, let's say 1, 2, 3, and 1, 2, 3, and 1, 2, 3. These are the ranks. So if you look at the choices or the rank given by A to 3 individuals, you can say that A is preferring Z over X, because rank 1 is given to Z option, last rank is given to X. B is, you can say it is, when we are looking at just these 2 alternatives, here you can see in case of B is preferring Z over, no, it is X over Z, because X is having rank 1. So X over Z, which is, you can see, is reverse of what A is preferring, and C is also preferring X over Z, because X is having second rank and Z is having the last rank. So that is why he will prefer X over Z. So this is a violation and contradiction here, majority rule, because it has to be same outcome, but which is not the case. So it is violating, we can say, one of the conditions. So he says that on this basis, on the analysis, three consequences were arrived at by him, and he used these consequences to build the general impossibility theory, we can say. That is why even we say that Arrow's impossibility theorem. It is impossible to achieve all the five conditions when we are having three alternatives, and hence the name. So the consequence one states when there are two individuals, if they are preferring, let's say, x to y, and irrespective of rank then given to the third alternative, which is z, always the outcome is going to be preference of x to y. This is first consequence. Second consequence, here we see that if in a given social choice, we see that the will of, let's say, individual a is prevailing against the individual b, then again we will see always whether b is indifferent to the choice of a or b agrees to a. We'll see that always the will of a, the choice of a, and the decision of a will prevail over the decision of b, which is the another individual. Consequence three was that if there is a conflict between the two individuals a and b, between what choices to be made between the alternatives, then the entire society is going to be indifferent between those two alternatives, let's say x and y. So the society will be indifferent if there is a conflict. So here we complete all the different social welfare functions which are there and have been proposed, and the consequences and what are the critique related to that. So thank you so much everyone for joining us on Ansarkari.